They're both used to mean nothing. Finally, we have two values that don't fit any particular mold. They're called undefined and null. They're both used to mean nothing, but in slightly different ways. Undefined is the value JavaScript uses when it doesn't have a value for something. For example, when you create a new variable, if you don't set its value to anything using the equals operator, its value will be set to undefined. var my variable. My variable. Undefined. The null value is usually used when you want to deliberately say this is empty. var null variable equals null. Null variable. Null. At this point, you won't be using undefined or null very often. You'll see undefined if you create a variable and don't set its value, because undefined is what JavaScript will always give you when it doesn't have a value. It's not very common to set something to undefined. If you feel the need to set a variable to nothing, you should use null instead. Null is used only when you actually want to say something's not there, which is very occasionally helpful. For example, say you're using a variable to track what your favorite vegetable is. If you hate all vegetables and don't have a favorite, you might set the favorite vegetable variable to null. Setting the variable to null would make it obvious to anyone reading the code that you don't have a favorite vegetable, if it were undefined. However, someone might just think you hadn't gotten around to setting a value yet. Now you know all the basic data types in JavaScript: numbers, strings, and booleans, as well as the special values null and undefined. Numbers are used for math-type things, strings are used for text, and booleans are used for yes or no questions. The values null and undefined are there to give us a way to talk about things that don't exist. In the next two chapters, we'll look at arrays and objects, which are both ways of joining basic types to create more complex collections of values. So far we've learned about numbers and strings, which are types of data that you can store and use in your programs. But numbers and strings are kind of boring. There's not a lot that you can do with a string on its own. JavaScript lets you create and group together data in more interesting ways with arrays. An array is just a list of other JavaScript data values. For example, if your friend asked you what your 3 favorite dinosaurs were, you could create an array with the names of those dinosaurs, in order. Var my top 3 dinosaurs equals T-Rex, Velociraptor, Stegosaurus. So instead of giving your friend 3 separate strings, you can just use the single array my top 3 dinosaurs. Let's look at dinosaurs again. Say you want to use a program to keep track of the many kinds of dinosaurs you know about. You could create a variable for each dinosaur, like this. Var dinosaur 1 equals T-Rex. Var dinosaur 2 equals Velociraptor. Var dinosaur 3 equals Stegosaurus. Var dinosaur 4 equals Triceratops. Var dinosaur 5 equals Brachiosaurus. Var dinosaur 6 equals Trinodon. Var dinosaur 7 equals Apatosaurus. Var dinosaur 8 equals Diplodocus. Var dinosaur 9 equals Compsognathus. This list is pretty awkward to use, though, because you have 9 different variables when you could have just one. Imagine if you were keeping track of 1,000 dinosaurs. You'd need to create 1,000 separate variables, which would be almost impossible to work with. It's like if you had a shopping list, but every item was on a different piece of paper. You'd have one piece of paper that said eggs, another piece that said bread, and another piece that said oranges. Most people would write the full list of things they want to buy on a single piece of paper. Wouldn't it be much easier if you could group all 9 dinosaurs together in just one place? You can, and that's where arrays come in. To create an array, you just use square brackets. In fact, an empty array is simply a pair of square brackets, like this. But who cares about an empty array? Let's fill it with our dinosaurs. To create an array with values in it, enter the values, separated by commas, between the square brackets. We can call the individual values in an array items or elements. In this example, our elements will be strings, the names of our favorite dinosaurs, so we'll write them with quote marks. We'll store the array in a variable called dinosaurs. var dinosaurs equals T-Rex, Velociraptor, Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Brachiosaurus, Trinodon, Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, Compsognathus. Note, because this is a book and the page is only so wide, we can't actually fit the whole array on one line. D is to show where we've put the code onto an extra line because the page is too narrow. When you type this into your computer, you can type it all on one line. Long lists can be hard to read on one line, but luckily that's not the only way to format or lay out an array. You can also format an array with an opening square bracket on one line, the list of items in the array each on a new line, and a closing square bracket, like this. var dinosaurs equals T-Rex, Velociraptor, Stegosaurus, Triceratops, Brachiosaurus, Trinodon, Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, Compsognathus. If you want to type this into your browser console, you'll need to hold down the Shift key when you press the Enter key for each new line. Otherwise, the JavaScript interpreter will think you're trying to execute the current, incomplete, line. While we're working in the interpreter, it's easier to write arrays on one line. Whether you choose to format the items in an array on one line or on separate lines, it's all the same to JavaScript. However many line breaks you use, JavaScript just sees an array in this example, an array containing 9 strings. When it's time to access elements in an array, you use square brackets with the index of the element you want, as you can see in the following example. Dinosaurs 0,